Welcome back to another episode. We're going to start with some live current events that affect your ability to get things done. Here are the top 5 news stories that are going on in the shift to hybrid work that's going on around the world. In the last few months, Google let their employees choose how many days they want to work from the office. Google is giving employees more flexibility over how often they have to come into the office, with the CEO who's saying that employees can choose to work from home full-time or in the office full-time or some combination of the two. Speaking of tech companies, Microsoft to implement a new hybrid work model that gives employees more flexibility. Microsoft is moving to a new hybrid work model called the New World of Work, which will give employees more flexibility to choose when and where they work. Employees will be able to choose to work from home, to work full-time, to work in the office full-time, or some combination of the two. On the topic of tech companies, it looks like Salesforce is going to invest $1 billion into what they call the Future of Work initiative. Salesforce is investing $1 billion into its Future of Work initiative, which is designed to help the company adapt to the new world of work. The initiative includes investments in technologies, training, and employee well-being as well. Finally, LinkedIn study shows that 57% of people want to work remotely at least part-time. A recent study by LinkedIn found that 57% of employees want to work remotely at least part-time. The study also found that employees who work remotely are more likely to be satisfied with their jobs and have a better work-life balance. These are just a few of the many stories about the shift to hybrid work. As the world of work continues to evolve, it's clear that hybrid work is here to stay. So let's dive into some conversation today about this concept of hybrid work. I'm going to start this off by saying we work with 90 to 95% of business owners. So how does this affect us? How does this affect our world? Well, the people who work with us, the people who work for us, all of them are going to be affected. If we choose work from home, if we choose hybrid, if we choose work from the office, all of our teams are affected in this, and so we need to understand the concept, and we need to figure out what is the best practice. How do we help our team get the most out of this? How do we get the most out of this? Someone mentioned earlier when I put up a post asking questions, they said, the concept of productivity is overused. It's basically treating people like machines and robots, just trying to force the maximum out of them. That's not how I see it. I wrote back and I said, that's an interesting opinion, and I'm sorry you've had to work in places like that. In our world, productivity is the difference between an entrepreneur being able to feed their family or not. I mean, if you can't be productive, if you can't do the work, if you can't drive your business forward, there's a chance you're not going to make any money and you can't feed your family that week. So that's a big deal to us. You need to be able to take care of the ones you love. Besides that, it's the ability to get it done more quickly. Meaning, can you get the things that need to get done so that you can go do all the things you want to do? And so we're going to be talking about a 4-day work week. We're going to be talking about productivity tips and hacks today. We're going to be going through, as always, our top 10 list. And it's mainly focused on how to optimize your productivity, how to increase the ability to get stuff done quicker so that you can wrap it up and go do all the other things that you want to get into your life on a day-to-day basis. So let's dive in. You know, my mentor told me that for the very first time. He said, hey, if you were going to drive in southern sunny California down an open highway and it was sunny, there's no clouds in the sky, it's beautiful out, it's warm, middle afternoon in the summer, what kind of car would you drive? And I was like, a soft top Ferrari, top down. He's like, great pick. You're going to be flying down that highway, smooth roads, open highway. You have a hell of a time. He said, now imagine the environment around you changes. All of a sudden, now you find yourself in the middle of Iowa in a cornfield off-road. Would you choose the same vehicle? I'm like, no. I'd never off-road in a Ferrari. That's a really dumb idea. And he said, exactly. Now, Let me ask, has the world around us changed? Yeah. COVID, wars. I mean, the whole world's changed in the last few years. And he goes, exactly. But have you updated your vehicle? Or are you still driving through a cornfield in your Ferrari? And I started laughing and went, whoa, that is something to think about. What about you? Have you updated the way you're going about your life since the world has changed? Have you done it thoughtfully? Have you done it where you sat down and intentionally decided the new adjustments you'll make? Not just what life forced you to do, but what you choose to do in this new environment. If you haven't, now might be the time. So I reached out to our audience, and there was a couple people who had questions that I think are worth chatting through. Number one, Fred asked, are monthly scheduled meetings more efficient than spur of the moment unscheduled meetings? What are your thoughts on this?
Are monthly scheduled meetings more effective than spur of the moment unscheduled ones? Mm-hmm. I think both can be very ineffective if there's not a set agenda and outcome or actions that are taken away from that meeting. So it doesn't matter whether they're monthly or they're spur of the moment, so long as that when there is a meeting, there's a clear point of what's our outcome here and some takeaways or action items that result from it.
Totally. I think one of the most important things I learned about the concept of meetings is starting from the top. Number one, there has to be an agenda. I'm notorious for having meetings with no agenda, and they're wildly unproductive. Doesn't matter if they're spur of the moment or planned. If there's no agenda, if there's no clear outcome and topics to be covered, questions to be answered, decisions to be made, if you can nail it down, you have an agenda in advance. Number two, limit the time. So one of my good friends makes all of his meetings 15 minutes or less. He doesn't schedule half-hour meetings. He doesn't schedule hour meetings on his calendar. He goes 15 minutes. And I always ask him, how in the world do you make everything fit into 15 minutes? And he always says, hey, they'll only bring up the most important things. Everything else will get left aside, and you'll actually get the most important stuff done and streamline through it very quickly. And so, number one, have an agenda. Number two, limit the amount of time. And then number three, work on outcomes, not tasks. This is so very important. Outcome focused, meaning what is the outcome you're trying to accomplish with this meeting? If you don't know what the outcome is, then you'll just work through all the check boxes. Why? To get them checked. And that becomes unproductive. Versus if you know the outcome, you might be able to get to the outcome and only checking 2 out of the 10 boxes. The outcome is met, the meeting is over, we're all good to go, move on with our day. As long as the outcome is met, you can move forward. And so you really have to train yourself, train your team, train your organization, outcome-focused meetings. So 3 things. Have an agenda, limit the amount of time, outcome-focused meetings. Regardless if they're spur of the moment or planned, you're going to get a lot more done if you put those 3 things in place compared to not having them. Great question, Fred. Next up, Tom reached out and said, I'm currently working as a solopreneur and I'm finally ready to hire a part-time virtual assistant. What is the best way to find a great virtual assistant? And number 2, how can I delegate scheduling my Zoom calls with clients and prospects to my virtual assistant as I find more process of scheduling eats up a lot of my time? So 2 questions here Tom has. 1, how do I find a great virtual assistant? And then number 2, how do I get them to take my scheduling and calendar management off my plate?
I love this question because a lot of times we only are looking for people when we absolutely need them instead of constantly having feelers out there and having our eyes on rock star players at specific roles, right? Yep. Or outcomes that we're trying to obtain. So for example, if you see a rock star salesperson, create a relationship with them, stay in touch with them, connect with them, because when you need that person, you'll be more likely to take them through your interview process and vet them out and have them on your team. We call it a phantom bench. We learned this from our mentor, and it's so helpful, whether it's a VA or it's sales or it's marketing. Always have your thumb on the pulse of the top talent in your industry. And for us, by luck and the grace of God, we have had great talent on our teams because we do this and we build relationships with people that absolutely crush it in those, unique roles, or even if it's not even a specific role, but it's their character and what they bring to a team and their strengths, and just knowing when we need this, that's who we'd call. And we go to that phantom bench, if you will, and then invite them in. They still go through the referral process. Another great option would be through referral. Without a doubt, sometimes someone will have someone. This happened with us. We have someone on the team that is fantastic, and they came to us because there was a shift in the real estate economy, and that team no longer needed them, and we luckily were able to scoop them up, and that was phenomenal. So that always works. You never know when someone, like maybe they would love to work with that person, but there's just been a shift, and so then you're able to take them in. So referrals are great as well.
Totally. I'm a big fan of ABR. Always be recruiting. And people ask me all the time, like, what if I don't have a position open? What if I don't have a budget? What if I don't have the capacity to bring another person on? And it's like, well, you don't have to bring them on, but you're always recruiting them. You're always, always, always. If you meet someone who's a great customer service, has a great attitude, works hard, lights up the room, everyone responds well to them. They're great in sales, or they just make you feel so cared for. And I don't care if it's while you're traveling, at a hotel, at an airport, in a restaurant, at an office, in someone else's team. Like if you meet someone and you just get the vibe like this person has that magic, definitely recruit them. And so always be recruiting, regardless if it's when you're traveling, at a hotel, in a restaurant, in a business, at someone else's company. If you meet someone that you just get that feeling has the magic, They have that zest. They light up the room. They're getting stuff done. People are responding to them. They're making things happen. They just have that magic that an A player has. One of the most important things you can do is schedule just an introductory meeting, is what they call it. It's a getting to know you meeting. And it's a recruitment process where what you're doing is just listening to their goals, their dreams, their desires, what they're wanting to accomplish, where they're trying to get to in their life, what stage of their career are they at, what are they most excited about, what are their greatest strengths. And all you're doing is saying, hey, does this person have the skill, will, and talent to fit into my culture, to fit into my team? Could they fill a role? Is there a place here for them? And it might be filled right now, but keep your eye, because if this person ever leaves, I know exactly who I'm going to go try to get. The way to think about this is a family friend of ours took over. He bought a piece of the Golden State Warriors, and they took it from a $400 million franchise to a $4 billion or $5 billion franchise over 11 years. And if you owned a professional sports team, what do you have to do? You have to recruit top talent. You have to scout people coming out of schools. You have to scout people on other teams in the league. And you have to sit down and say, what combination of these humans is going to give us the highest probable chance of winning the championship? And so it's the same exact concept, but most business owners don't think this way. Like Amanda was saying, most of them wait until they absolutely need someone, and then they try to find someone. And when you absolutely need someone, you're usually at your max capacity, meaning you don't have any more capacity. And then you're supposed to magically hire someone and then create more capacity to train them? That doesn't make sense. And so another piece here is always be recruiting. Hire people before you fully need them. Hire people when you have 80% capacity, 90% capacity, meaning you have 10 or 20% more that you have in your life that's open, and you can use that to train them. Because if you're at 100+% capacity and you have nothing else left, no time, your calendar's overbooked, everything's mashed up, how in the world are you going to properly train the person when you bring them on board? So always be recruiting. Make sure you bring them on before you need the 100% capacity spillover. Bring them on at 90% or 80% capacity. Make sure you train them. This is the biggest mistake. People hire other people, bring them into their company and say, okay, well, you handle this. and they don't have a playbook. They don't have an SOP. They don't have a formula for how it's done properly. And then the weirdest part is then they get upset at the person for quote unquote doing it wrong. It's like, how am I doing it wrong? You never told me how you wanted it. And so this concept of always be recruiting, bring them on before you need them, and have playbooks, have SOPs, have systems and processes built out so that you can properly onboard them. We have this process called a full onboarding map. It's a 12-week plus process of how to fully take someone from a dead stop at zero to full speed on the highway where they're going 65 miles an hour and they're enjoying the process. And so you have to build one of these to onboard new people onto your company and give them a chance at getting up to full speed before you take your hands off and let them just go for it. There's a few tips. Where specifically to find them? Amanda had some great suggestions. Referrals through friends. If you're always recruiting, you will already have a pulse on some great people that you can go try to cross-recruit from other organizations. If you don't have those two options, you can go through an agency. We've had good luck and bad luck through an agency, to tell you the truth. We've had a rock star we found, and we've also had some dupes where we filled out all the paperwork and did all of our part, and no one showed up, and we couldn't find anybody. So hit or miss there. But I love the always be recruiting process. I also love referrals from other friends, someone that's worked with an organization that they're a rock star and they don't want to let them go, but something's changed. They're either upgrading or downsizing, and you get to swipe someone else's A-plus player. Oof, one of my favorites. So, hope that's helpful, Tom. Next up is our how-to section. Number 1, setting clear boundaries is essential in the modern work world, especially with the increasing prevalence of remote work and the blending of both personal and our professional lives. Here are 5 essential steps to maintain these boundaries and set them properly. Number 1, define your work hours. Decide on a start and end time for your workday each and every day. If you're working remotely or practicing a flexible schedule, you still need to define the on and off times to prevent burnout and ensure personal time is protected. You're going to want to communicate these hours to your colleagues, to your superiors, and to your clients, and even your roommates to make sure they're aware of when they can reach you and when you're on or off in business. Number 2, create a dedicated workspace. Even if you don't have a separate home office dedicated, what you want to do is make sure you dedicate a specific spot in your home for work. Ensure that this space is free from non-work related distractions. And when you are in this space, this is your work time. When you leave the space, it's your personal time. This physical boundary helps creating a mental boundary between work and leisure to make sure your brain and body knows the difference when you transition. Number 3, set up communication boundaries. Use tools like Do Not Disturb feature on your communication apps outside of your work hours. Decide your on-response times for emails and messages. For example, you might set a rule for yourself that you won't answer emails after 7 p.m. on the weekends. Clearly communicate your availability to your team. Tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams allow you to set status indicators to let people know when you're on and when you're off. Number 4, take regular breaks. Schedule breaks throughout the day to step away from the work environment. This can help to delineate between intense work sessions and periods and moments of rest. You want to use techniques like the Pomodoro technique, where you'll work for 25 minutes straight and then take a 5-minute break to really train yourself when you're on and pushing and when you're off and relaxing. You need to train your brain, your body, and your nervous system so it knows the difference. Finally, number 5, establish personal rituals. Create routines that signal the beginning and the end of the workday. For example, a morning ritual might involve reading for 10 minutes before logging on, while an evening ritual could be a walk outside or a specific relaxation technique. These rituals act as bookends in your workday, further solidifying the boundaries between professional responsibilities and your personal free time. Remember, the key to effective boundaries is consistent enforcement. Once you've set these boundaries, it is crucial to respect and maintain them, and also to communicate them clearly to those you work with and those around you to ensure that both your productivity and your well-being are being taken into account by all parties. Now we're moving into our top 10 list for the week. How to increase personal performance and productivity, especially in the evolving modern work landscape. It requires a combination of technology, mindset, and habits. Here are the top 10 ways to enhance your productivity and performance amidst these changes. Number 1, establish a dedicated workspace. Even if you're working from home, designated a specific area as your workspace. This helps psychologically to prepare work time and separate it from personal time. I'm going to swing over here. What do you think about a dedicated workspace?
I have to say it is a very smart move. And for example, this morning you found me in your office, and I found that is the place where I can actually mostly completely disconnect from everything else and drop completely into focus on work and be really productive and not distracted. So I love that. You know that I have worked from all sorts of places in the home, from the kitchen table to the kitchen counter to a closet to a couch to a bed.
The roof, the meditation chair.
Yeah, I work all over the place, and it kind of depends on how I'm feeling. But also, I have to say that most recently, I've rejoined a co-working space because I personally find that working from home, while it's so beautiful and easy and you just go to your refrigerator and get a snack and see your family, I find that it starts to permeate into everything, and it's harder to drop into flow and be really productive. And I find that the best work that I can produce and create and how I can serve comes from a deep flow state. Yep. And when I'm too distracted by so many other things because I'm working in a very open or public space in the house or in a room where anyone can come in and out, it's so much harder to focus. And then I don't feel like I'm actually doing a good enough job. I actually feel more not just focused, but I feel so much more accomplished, and I feel proud and not exhausted when I find a workspace dedicated to that, whether it's your office or it's my co-working space, and I have energy after. When I am working from a more communal place, like the kitchen table, kitchen counter, bedroom, where people are going in and out, I am exhausted by the end of the day because my brain is trying to process so many things. Who's coming in? Who's going out? What do they want? What do they need? Who's at the door? Who needs to, oh gosh, what happened to our son? You know, everything versus escaping into this little workspace. So I 1,000% recommend this. And I hope that everyone does that, especially with this new work from home culture or movement, which is beautiful. But I think we really have to take into consideration the mental capacity and wear on when we're trying to do too many things all in the same space.
Yeah. I've had the opportunity to do just about every combination in this category. I've had a work at the office situation. I've had a work from home when my home was a bedroom / closet / office without a door. I just had a curtain. That was my setup in the beginning. I've had the situation of having my living room as the office and my bedroom as the bedroom. I've had the situation of having my desk in my bedroom where I'm sleeping and then rolling over and sitting in the chair at the desk. And then as we've grown and evolved, I've always technically worked from home in the majority of my business. And in doing that, though, I learned at some point, when I was a single guy before we met, I had a 2-bedroom apartment. I had an office, a living room, and a bedroom. And I was very adamant about that. Like, I needed a workspace and a living space, and it was different. And when I was in my workspace, I was working. And I was in my living space, I was living. LIVIN, man. Like, it was the ability to switch those. And the person who helped me the most on this was actually a book writing coach. I remember I hired her, and she says, one of the first things I need you to do, because she's worked with thousands of authors, and they have writer's block. They have trouble staying consistent with writing so many pages or words a day. They have trouble finishing their work. They have trouble just coming up with just the right thing to write about. And all this is as much as it's a passion and an art to write a book, it's work. It's getting your message out into the world. And she said, the number one thing I need you to do, I need you to have a workstation where this is your author station. Nothing else happens. This is where you write a book. You don't talk on the phone here. You don't text here. You don't email here. You don't talk to people. Nothing happens. When you sit in this chair and you use this pen at this desk with this binder or this book or this computer, you write. That is it. She said, I need you to have a writing outfit. You need a cape or a hat or a cloak or whatever you wear when you write, and you do nothing else in that outfit except for write this book. I need you to have writing music. I need you to have writing scents, smells. I need you to have writing sounds. I need you to have a writing temperature. I need this entire environment set that when you turn it to that setting, your brain knows now is the time to write the book. And I went, ooh, this sounds interesting. And I said, how does this work? What you're doing is setting a trigger that's going to set off a routine. And later there was books written about this. The Power of Habit, Atomic Habits, they talk about trigger, routine, reward. And so she was setting a trigger. The trigger was the place, the sound, the sight, the touch, the feel, the environment setting dialed in like a radio station to a very specific setting that you would tune into the environment. And once the environment was properly tuned in, it would activate a routine of creative flow, a routine of writing and expressing, a routine of capturing who you're talking to and expressing what they need to hear, know, and feel through the book. And then there was a reward. She goes, you're going to do it in segments, which we'll talk about in a few minutes here, but you're going to do it in segments. And after each segment, you're going to get up, you're going to take off the writing cloak, you're going to set down the writing pen, you're going to turn off the writing computer, you're going to clear the space, you're going to go to another space and do something for 5 minutes to enjoy yourself. Then you're going to come back and you're going to retune in the environment so that your maximum productivity, your maximum flow of ideation and creativity is going to come through you. And you're going to practice this back and forth and watch what happens. And the very first time I ever worked on a book, I did this. I was amazed. 0 writer's block, 0 lack of creativity. It was like I could turn on that flow state instantly and have it just going. And then I'd stop, go do something else, and it was great. And so I proceeded to try to do that with every part of my living environment. There was a meditation station. There was an eating place. There was a learning place. There was a relaxation place. There was a sleep and making love place. There was a space and place for everything. That way my body knew exactly what it needed to be doing when I'd enter the space. And then I got married.
And then what happened?
Everything is everywhere space.
I'm just kind of learning this about you, actually. I'm like, who is this coach and when did you work with her? Yeah. That makes a ton of sense that you separate it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I can blur the lines of a lot of things, and I can also really appreciate the beauty of having spaces dedicated to certain things.
Yeah. No, I think the gift is you bring a lot of color to my world.
Thanks.
Because I was a bit black and white when you met me. Very productive, but there was places to do things and places to not do things.
I'm just living. LIVIN.
LIVIN, man. And so that's the magic of other humans. Because here's what's fun. All of you will learn this. No matter how well you set up your space, if you're married or have a significant other or have animals and pets or have children or have someone or something else in your world, don't be too rigid. I had to learn this because life will test your ability to flex and flow by giving you people who quote unquote mess up your perfect environments. They're not messing it up. They're bringing a little life and fun to it. So learn to enjoy the life and fun. Learn to, enjoy things being a little out of order.
I have a question on the rigidity, because I know there's a lot of people that probably, some people this is like, whoa, like to me, I'm like, wow, that's a brilliant idea. I should do that. I'm going to try that out. Other people, they might already be doing that, and there might be someone else in their life that is kind of like not in alignment or doesn't understand that. Talk to me about the rigidity. Like, what do people get from that, and why did they do that?
So the rigidity, why I did that, I can't speak to other people. I can tell you my experience. So my experience, when I was optimizing to get stuff done, I was optimizing for how quickly and how efficiently can I get through it, even down to the grocery store. I knew if I entered through the door on the left at Sprouts Market, I could get all the things I needed, starting with the produce, moving over to the fish, grabbing the grains, getting a couple snacks, and picking a line. Depending on how many people were in line, I could get in and out of that store within 10 to 12 minutes. Now that was important because I was studying, working, trying to have a life and have fun, working out every day, trying to meditate, trying to read external books beyond just the books for school, trying to be a good student, trying to have a job. Like, there's so many things I was trying to do all at the same time. I didn't have the luxury of just flowing through the grocery store, and if it takes 20 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes, I wasn't able to get all the things done that I wanted to do. And so because there's so much I'd love to fit into every day, often more things than day, meaning there's more stuff I want to do than time available, I have to pick and choose. And so the least, and it was before I could afford to hire someone to go do something like grocery shopping. So I had to do it myself. I wasn't in a luxurious place where I'm like, oh, just send someone to the store to grab our stuff for us and we'll keep working on the things we want to do. And so when I was forced to choose, do I spend 5 more minutes at the grocery store, or do I get to meditate today? Do I spend 10 more minutes doing this now, or do I get to go to yoga and treat my body really well? And I have to choose between those things. And so that maximum productivity, the rigidness, was the more I could get more done in less time, the more life I could go live, and the more fun things I would have a chance to go fit into my day.
I see. So you're trying to fit in as much as humanly possible while still having some time to just live and be.
Totally.
So,
because if I didn't get the work done, I didn't get the reward of having fun.
So when did, I don't think it's completely switched, but when was there starting to be a shift? Because you're not as rigid anymore, and you're definitely more into you're a being. You're not just a doing. Like, you're definitely high productive, but I feel like now there's a little more flex and flow. And even when I get hyper focused on something, you're like, just be.
Yeah, I've been married to you for 10 years.
Oh, it was me? I did that? Okay. That's so fascinating. Okay, cool. But I learned that from you, though.
I know.
So I introduced it to you, but you reflected it back to me, and now I'm a being too. That's so beautiful. What cool gifts. Yeah, we really support each other in that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Number 2, set clear boundaries. With the blur between work and personal life, it is crucial to set clear work hours and stick to them. Inform family or housemates about your work hours to reduce distractions. What do you think of this one?
One of our clients had said, this one got me so good. After his father passed away, I believe it was, he took some time off to be with family, to grieve, to celebrate his dad's life and everything, and passing. And one thing that he shared with us was that he realized that work will try to work its way into every minute of your life if you let it. Yeah. And that just got me so good. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's that life is precious and life is short moment that we're reminded of when people are going through, someone passing, or if it was I was working really hard and I was trying to get a lot of things done, that I found myself maybe that was happening. But whatever it was, that stuck out to me so much, and is such a realization to put boundaries specifically around work. Yeah. Because, if you have a job, let's be real, you're disposable. And if you have your own business, it will most certainly, the to-do list never ends with what you need to accomplish. However, the things that are most precious to us, our loved ones, our health, the things that really matter in our life, we have to prioritize those. And to me, it's keeping boundaries around those things to protect them. And then work, yes, set a boundary around it, but also realize to protect more of the space for the things that really matter. And then work, you're here and I'll get to you. And what I love about this, for example, with us, we have 2-day dates. We have 2 dates a week, and I love it so much. And they're not short. They take up most of the day. I love it. It's made me have to fit in work into a very small space, which I love. I wanted that. I wanted to be a mom I wanted to be, a wife and a mom, and work would be part-time. I've said that from the very beginning, that once I'm a mom, I don't necessarily want to work full-time. I will if I have to, but I want to be more of an engaged, full-on mom. And so it's funny because that's really what happened is I have 2 days blocked off for us. And then I have a work day that fits into 3 days. And I kind of, the workhorse in me was challenged with that, but the smarter, the more efficient and work smarter, not harder, part of me really stepped in and was hey, if you want to really do this thing and do this work and really, show up and serve, this is the container. This is the space that you get to do it in. So only focus on the things that really matter in that category. So I think for some people that are, feel but I got to do this and this. One thing that you've said was the to-do list will never, ever end. So accepting that first, and then second, getting really crystal clear on of that list, what is the most important thing? And so what's so beautiful is because of my limited work time, because I choose to prioritize our love and relationship and our marriage, and I choose to prioritize being a mom and spending a lot of time with our son and our home and everything. I have to be really smart with the time that I do have with work. So the boundaries are everything. And I have to say, I feel so fulfilled in every category. When I don't have the boundaries in place, things get blurry and messy, and I don't feel like I'm ever doing enough in any one of those categories. But the second you put in a boundary, you start showing up a lot different because you're not just getting bogged down with noise. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. This is one of those things for me. I had a client that I've been working with for about a year, maybe 8 months, who reached out and I said, hey, how's it going? And they said, oh man, we're busier than we've ever been. And my gut true response was, that sucks. And he looked at me, he goes, what are you talking about? It's great. We're growing like crazy. Our numbers are up. Our team is growing. Everything. I mean, we're just busy. And my question is, the reason I responded that way, my question is, what is your outcome? Are you being busy to be busy? I've seen, and you said this to me, because you came out of the corporate world, and when you came to me, you said so many people pride themselves on out-busying each other. I have more meetings. I have more things. I have more stuff. And it's a community of people who they take pride in how busy they can be. And what I've learned is it's not about being busy. It's about being productive. Can you get the most important things done? We had a coach we worked with for years who worked with us, and they kept having us look at our schedule and say, is that absolutely critical for this to work? If it's not, remove it. And I just kept peeling things off my schedule, one after the next, after the next, after the next, until all of a sudden I was only doing the most important things that actually moved the business forward. And as we did that, I had a ton of free time. And our numbers grew by a couple 100% over 3 years. And I was looking at it, and we were making more profit in a month than we used to make in a year. And I was going, how is this possible? I'm doing less. I'm only doing the most important things. We're making more revenue. We're helping more people. We're making more profit than ever before. Like, my brain was confused because it didn't make sense. But it was amazing because we were only doing the most important things. And so this concept of setting boundaries, I think we're taking it beyond the piece here. It's saying, set your start time and your stop time for work. Let people in your office or let people in wherever you're working know, hey, I'm working during these hours. Please don't interrupt me. But when you take the concept of boundaries and you start putting them in other places, it allows you to then have more freedom. I think one of my favorites, we might talk about a 4-day work week a little bit here. We've been having a 4-day work week for a long time. We just don't say it that way. If you think about it, we work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, half day on Monday, and half day on Friday. That's technically a 4-day work week. And so we've been doing that for a long time, mainly because my belief is we should start our week and end our week on giving each other our best selves. What does that mean? So many people wake up and they have this amazing morning routine where they journal and breathe and meditate and work out and cold plunge and sauna, and they do all this stuff to be their best selves. And then they take their best selves and they pour it into work. And I was like, that's great and all, but shouldn't you give your best self to the ones you love first and then give the rest to work instead of giving your best self to work all day and giving what's ever left over to the ones you love? And the moment I had that thought and distinction, I went, ooh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to wake up Monday morning. I'm going to work out, meditate, do my breath work, journal, sauna, do all my things. And then the first person I'm going to share all that energy and all that goodness with is my wife. I want her to have all the best of me. And once I've shared that from 9 a.m. till noon, we go on a walk, we go surfing, we go explore waterfalls, we go have lunch together. We fit all kinds of little dates in. We go hiking, whatever we do. We fit it into that 9 a.m. till noon. Then we come back. Then I start the work week after I've given my best to the one I love most. Same thing on Fridays. Work all week, get done on Thursday night, set everything up so that Friday morning, wake up, work out. To head into the weekend, I give my best to my wife. And then at noon we get back, we come record this podcast, we do a few other things to wrap up the week, and we're done. And it's that thought of, we've set boundaries around work. I said, hey, in 4 days a week, can I get everything that needs to get done? Sometimes we don't. Sometimes I need to sneak in a few hours on an afternoon on a Saturday or Sunday to get something done. Sometimes we're traveling or have a speech or something we have to do. But 90% of the time, we've figured out how to get our work into those four days a week and how to make the most time available for each other in it and around it. So set those boundaries. Number 3, time blocking instead of multitasking. Set specific blocks of time to tackle specific tasks. This includes setting aside time for breaks and personal activities as well. I'm a huge fan of time blocking. Huge fan of this. What are your thoughts on time blocking?
You are really great at time blocking.
Yep.
I have struggled with it a lot, and and every once in a while, like right now, I'm getting back into it. Jarek has this amazing time block schedule calendar where you can see
we call it a time budget.
Yes, and every day you can see what hour is dedicated to what activity or thing or person. And it's so beautiful. And I think I was really struggling with how things fit in, and I felt like I just had so much to do and I didn't know where it fit in. And I did this and it worked a ton. The time blocking works so much because then I can actually, and I'm very visual, so I could really see, okay, these are my hours dedicated to working out or filling my cup. These are the hours dedicated to us. These are the hours dedicated to my son. These are the hours dedicated to different work outcomes or whatever, meetings or trainings. And it's been such a game changer. Yeah. I think that it helps you mentally prepare for what's to come. So you're not just like being, I don't know, dragged through the day or just like feeling like you're out of control of it. And instead you can see exactly what you're dedicating. And you can also see why you feel the way that you feel. Sometimes you're like, oh, I'm so exhausted. I don't know why. It's like, well, you didn't schedule any break time, or when we weren't doing weekly dates, or we'd fall off for some reason, or, schedule, or life happens, it happens. We could look back and go, we need to time block this time for us. And we do. And it's amazing. So now we feel more connected than ever. And it's obvious why, because if you look at your calendar or your time budget, and you can see, this is why I feel so loved and connected and cherished by my husband. This is why I feel so, I had back-to-back calls on this day. That's why I feel a little talked out. I have no words left. It makes a ton of sense. So I think there's so beautiful. Your brain can mentally prepare for what's to come. You can also evaluate after why you feel the way you feel, and then you can optimize what needs to change. So for me, again, I wasn't doing it. And when I started to time block, I can then get in the zone and get prepared and really show up. I know the energy, I know the routine, I know what's to come. I can put focus in and find flow there, and then I can turn it off and go to the next thing. There's no guessing, and it's beautiful. I love it. And you're really great at it.
I love this concept. So this concept definitely changed my life, because what was happening in my world is coaching to me is a very creative process, meaning I need to be in flow. I need to be ready, on my toes. I never know what's going to be said. I need to ask, useful and insightful questions to help spark that insight for them. I need to challenge people. I need to be energized and excited and there for them and really make space, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual space for them. And to go from that to, accounting, I need to get my books done. My brain would feel like it would explode, where I'm like, it's like trying to switch gears without stepping on the clutch. It just doesn't make sense. It's like grinding my own mental gears. And so I literally took a time management and productivity course one time, and he shared the simplest thing that made the biggest difference, which was group like and similar activities with other like and similar activities.
Yes.
And I remember sitting there and being like, okay, Captain Obvious, why didn't I think of this before? And it was so simple. It was like, take logical, mathematical, if you're an architect, like structural things with hard boundaries and rules, and put all that stuff together. And then take flow, the right brain, creative, flowy, artistic kind of stuff, and put all that together. Put your phone calls and people-y stuff together. Put your spreadsheets and number stuff together, and chunk it. So it's like left brain activities, right brain activities, high energy activities, end the day activities, begin the day activities, relaxing activities. Literally chunk them all together and then place them in giant blocks throughout your week, so that you can just shift into that technical gear and then stay in that gear until all things are done. Then you can switch into your people-y gear and stay in that gear until all meetings are done. Because trying to go from a budget preparation meeting into a sales pitch is a big gear shift. And I've watched people do this. I had a 1.5-year stint as president and chief strategy officer of Success Enterprises, and we were part of a large organization that was on Wall Street and had thousands of employees. And I watched some of these co-leaders or executives go from a budget meeting to a marketing meeting to a creative meeting to a team meeting to an HR meeting to something else. And I was like, ugh, they do a not so great job at time chunking and blocking. Now, that's just how life is in corporations as executives. It is what it is. They don't have much control over that. In small business world that I live in, I definitely have control over this. Knock on wood, luckily. So when I set my week, I do this process. It's something we do with our Business Accelerator clients where we have a full-time budget. And we color code everything, and we put giant blocks throughout the week of when and where and why we do certain things. And it is an absolute game changer. Mentally frees you up, emotionally makes you feel alive again, and it gives you certainty, but lots of space for creativity and flexibility. It's wonderful. I highly recommend this. Number 4, leverage technology and use productivity tools, apps like Trello or Asana or Notion, to organize tasks and have help with virtual communication tools like Zoom or Slack to keep you in connection with your team. Yeah? I don't know how else you'd stay in connection with your team or organize projects.
I think this is a great tip. And my recommendation would be to not jump from thing to thing to thing to thing.
Yeah.
I think that there's so many different options for task management, so many different options for communication, and then you're jumping from many. We have, and it's tempting. It's almost like shiny object syndrome. I think what our brain is chasing is, will this make my life easier, faster, more efficient, whatever. We're always looking for less. Our brain wants to conserve energy, and so, but whatever you're doing, just focus on keeping it simple and keeping it outcome focused instead of like what's the latest and greatest. Because since we're talking about productivity, there is a huge, what is the word? It's the I forget the word, that is the switching cost. The switching cost of going from this software to that software to this app to that app, you're losing time. There is cost in that, of money, of time, of energy, of resources to make that switch. So before you do, really vet it out. Don't let the marketing just sell you on this is the latest and greatest thing. And in fact, if anything, and you've given 2 really great examples of where you've hired someone to help master something, master your spaces and your creation, master your time and productivity. You are really great at that. And I would say the same for this. Instead of being like, I will speak to my own experience. I've heard so many great things about Notion. I have tried Notion. I've not really got into it. I know it's a powerhouse of a tool. We tend to use Asana. You've used Trello. I've just kind of decided I've spent so much time, money, and energy and resources in switching that we're just going to stick with this one. And if we do decide to switch, we're bringing in a pro. Yeah. We're bringing in a pro to make sure that when we make the switch, 1, we're saving as much time, energy, and resources. Our switching cost is as low as possible. And 2, we're getting the most out of it. Yeah. And that actually makes sense from a efficiency standpoint and productivity standpoint. Because otherwise, it's such a headache. And for your team to be switching and switching and switching, what a headache and what a loss of production or efficiencies and just frustration. So just whatever you're doing, make the most of it, make it rock. And if you decide to switch, bring in a pro.
I agree 10,000%. I've definitely hopped from software to software thinking it was going to be the magic sauce that would fix everything in my world and help me get more done in less time and all this stuff. And the reality is you spend so much time trying to learn the new one that it's just a distraction. And so, I mean, we're setting up a new affiliate program for our Core 4 Challenge group. And the first thing I did was not try to log in and figure it out. I called the company and just said, hey, do you have any experts, people who've done this 1,000 times that know how to do it, that I can just hire and have them set it up exactly for the outcome we're looking for? They know how to do it. They know what they need. They know exactly how to put it together. Luckily, they wrote me back and said, we do it complimentary for new members. I went, great. What do you need? They sent me a list of all the things that they needed. I sent it back to them. They are now in the background putting it all together for me so that it is handled.
And done well.
And the key is I could have spent probably days, if not weeks, trying to figure this out and testing it and messing it up and fiddling with it. And I've just learned it's not worth doing that. The good news is if you don't have the opportunity to just hire someone to do it for you, what you can do is at least start on YouTube. At least go straight to YouTube and look up someone to walk you through how to do it. That way you're not in there fiddling around yourself trying to come up with your way to do it. Like, you literally can learn from experts online and very quickly adopt new technology or new information. I think this one's kind of a given, though. In today's modern workplace, get on Slack, get in project management dashboards. That way, with a remote team working from lots of different places, everyone can be doing their part to move things forward and seamlessly communicating with each other, even though they're all over the world on different time zones and different situations in different cities, but all collaborating together online. It's very useful. Number 5, prioritize tasks. Use the Eisenhower box or the Pareto principle, 80-20 method, to focus on the most important pieces that will yield the most significant results first. I'm a huge fan of this. Huge fan.
Tell us more.
80-20 principle. So the overall concept here is they went and did research and found that 80% of the traffic was on 20% of the streets. 80% of the pea pods gave off, 20% of the pea pods gave off 80% of all the peas in a little bush that produces peas. They found out that 20% of the activities most people do produce 80% of the results they're looking for. And so they just saw this principle over and over and over and over again in work and life and people and traffic and plants and birds and animals and everything in between. And so the principle says, what are the 20% of most important activities that yield 80% of the results you're trying to accomplish? Prioritize those first. That doesn't mean it's going to handle everything, but it should handle, if done right, it should create 80% of the intended results just by those 20% of activities. And so this process of figuring out what are the most important 20% of activities that you can focus on getting done in the beginning, at first, the first things you do. And ideally, that's going to get you 80% of the way to the result you're trying to get to. And so this is fun. What's the 20% of fitness activities you can do that'll produce 80% of you staying healthy, fit, and having vitality and energy all the time? What's the 20% habit or activity you can put in place that produces 80% of the magic with your spouse and the ones you love? That most important thing you do every day that causes that spark to light up between you both? What's the 20% of activities you can do in your sales that drive 80% of your results? This is where you can go down every category of life and business and identify the most important activity that produces the majority of the results. And these things you can go back a step and anchor in to your time blocks to make sure these things absolutely must get done every day no matter what. Other things you can fit in as you can kind of pepper them around the schedule, but these 20% of activities that produce 80% of the results are your absolute must on the commitments.
I love this so much because, first of all, your stories are phenomenal. Your recall and stories of pea pods and the 80-20 rule is really remarkable. One thing that you've said before regarding prioritizing tasks and leveraging that 80-20 rule, you say, what is the thing that takes the least amount of effort but produces the maximum reward? What's the thing that takes the least amount of effort or energy or time or whatever, but it produces so much? Do those things. And at first when I heard that, I thought, like, isn't that kind of lazy? Like, you're doing the thing with the least amount of effort. But when you think about it, it's about efficiency. So I love this so much, and I love that how you share it, because it's so smart. Yep. It's so smart. Doing something that takes the most amount of effort or most amount of energy does not guarantee maximum results. Now, some things may, may equate or equal out, but the way you explain that makes your brain filter things so much differently. And it's so beautiful. On the topic of productivity and this show today, it's not about doing more for the sake of doing more. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's how do we do exactly that? How do we do whatever it is that we need to do in a way that's just more efficient to get more out of it, not giving more and more of ourselves, like depleting ourselves and putting more on our plate and running ourselves into the ground. We're not trying to just do that, you know what I mean? Become robots and productivity monsters. What we're trying to do is actually, out of every minute, how do we make it count in such a way that we get more time back, more freedom back in our lives to do the things that we really want to do? And when it comes to relationships, one thing that I love that you mentioned was in your relationship. And I thought, well, shouldn't you just do whatever? And the idea is you could go around exhausting yourself and always putting out a ton of effort, right, into your relationship. But if there's little return on it, if you went and, I don't know, you could buy me a new car. And I'd be like, wow, that's amazing. Cool. That took a lot of time, energy, effort to go and do, to make the money, to go and pick it out, to surprise me. Versus if you just picked me a wildflower off the street on our walk, I would just melt, and it would be the sweetest thing in the world. And so I think that it's so beautiful where sometimes we think if I put more effort and energy into it, it will return that same or greater amount. And that's not always true. And I think that if we're really clear on that truth, that it's not always true, that the more effort you put in, the more you push yourself, the more you'll get out of it. In fact, you'll find so much freedom on the other side when you actually flip that and you go, what's the least amount of effort and energy I can put into this to get the maximum amount? That doesn't mean that you're not going to work hard. That doesn't mean you're not going to put energy in. It simply means you're going to make sure that you're not overlooking some really simple, efficient tasks or things you can do for a huge return and great dividends, and actually get and save that energy and your resources for other things as well.
Yeah. There's the thought that goes around this is really important. It's being efficient with your resources. And so there's lots of stories that go with this, but the simplest way to describe it is if we were trying to climb Mount Everest and we could only take so much resources with us, meaning so much water and so much food in our backpacks, we have to then be very intelligent of when and where we use the resources to make sure we get to the place we're trying to go safe, with food, with water, and survive the journey. And so it's this concept of, I need to be very intelligent of what I'm willing to use resources-wise, and then I need to make sure I'm putting in enough to get the result that's needed and not wasting resources. And so you start to get really efficient. I think something that helped me learn this was probably living in a village in Uganda. There was very little resources there, meaning they didn't have running water, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have toilets. So we had to figure out, how do we use the maximum ability of the resources we have to make the most of every day? And so to get drinking water, I had to walk a quarter mile down the road, fill up 2 jerry cans, and then carry them all the way back, which is like a strongman competition in itself, just to get the water there. Then we had to boil the water just to then let it cool, and hopefully a bug doesn't fall in it, to keep it sanitary, that we could then drink it as soon as it cools later that day. So to get a glass of water took an extraordinary amount of effort. And it was like, that's a lot of effort to get a single glass of water. Versus, hey, let's save up and get a filtration pen. One of those straws you can drink straight out of the river with, and it actually filters the water and makes it clean enough that it's sanitary and you can drink it and it's good for your body. And I was like, man, that's one of those 80-20 things. You just saved me a quarter mile walk 2 directions. You just saved me boiling water. You just saved all those activities through having one productivity tool that you can use to get the same outcome of healthy, sanitary drinking water. And it's like, there it is. That's the 80-20 with sanitary drinking water when traveling like that. And so it's looking for what are those things that make the difference. The other question you might ask here, specifically in relationships, What is the difference that makes the difference? Because we might be doing a lot of activities to try to wow or love on or care for someone, and only one of those activities might actually matter to that person. And so we might be going like fireworks and fairy tales and storybooks, and we're throwing everything out there, being like, look at what I'm doing for you. And to them, they're like, that one flower made all the difference. Just give me one of those every day. And you're like, really? I mean, I didn't need to do all these things. I just needed this one thing that was actually important to you. And so it's a concept of, can you find out what's the difference that actually makes the difference? This is for your relationships. This is client retention. This is team member retention. If you want to know why people are sticking around, you have to know what is the difference that makes the difference to them. What matters most? Those are the things to put your energy into. And now you can cut back resources on all the other random stuff and just focus on being extraordinary at doing the thing that makes the biggest difference. Let's see, number 6. Stay active. Incorporate regular physical activity into your day. This can and will be maybe a brief walk for a few moments, or stretching, or a quick workout, but physical activity boosts mental clarity and energy.
This is funny. Okay, so one thing that always makes me chuckle a little bit is when I see someone working on a building or doing manual labor. And then I go to work out for an hour, but they're doing manual labor with their body all day long. To me, it's kind of crazy because I'm like, wow, I have to make sure I'm moving my body for an hour or something. Meanwhile, it's built into their day. And it's such a reflection of our culture today. We're so sedentary because we're just working in a sitting, like at a desk, at a computer, most people nowadays. And we're not moving, but our bodies were designed to move. And so if you think even back generations and generations ago, when most people were working, whether they're hunting or gathering or whatever it was, they were moving their bodies most of the day, right? It wasn't just sitting sedentary at a desk at a computer, obviously. So we have to honor how our bodies were built and what they were built for and work that in. It's actually really unhealthy how we're working these days. So if we can take a moment, so not just your hour though, not just your hour in the morning or your time in the evening, but throughout the day to get up, to move your energy. I love the idea too. If you're going from meeting to meeting to meeting, take 5 minutes to just let your brain at least calm down and like collect its energy, to build up your own internal energy, to get a snack, to fuel your body, to move your body. It's so important. And whatever it is, whether it's a few minutes of stretching or a little workout or some breath exercise or getting outside. I don't know about you, but if I ever need a recharge, if I walk outside and I step into the sun and the sun just shines on me, it's like my cells are tingly and alive again. It's so good. So without a doubt, we've got to stay active. We have to do that. There's nothing more important when it comes to work and our well-being than taking breaks to honor ourselves and honor our body and our brains and to move them. So good for you.
Yep. I'm obviously a huge fan of this. I think taking a walk, I did a walk and talk meeting yesterday morning.
I'm so glad you did that. I heard you doing that and I'm so glad. And that was such a perfect meeting to do it because, you weren't coaching someone. You weren't in a creative flow. You were just having a chat with them and you were doing that. I have a question. Can you talk about the problems that have come from though not moving when you have taken too many calls and just sitting? So
yesterday I did a walk and talk where I had a meeting that popped up. I was running late because I was focusing on a conversation my wife and I were having, and I was watching my workout time like squish, squish, squish. And I'm like, oh God, I'm going to miss it. I only have 10 minutes to get a full workout and like that's not going to happen. And so I thought about it and I was like, you know what? One, I used to have a treadmill desk that I actually miss, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure out if I can get this call to work on the treadmill. So I went down to our treadmill And I figured out if I get the phone just close enough to the door, it picks up a little bit of the Wi-Fi signal. And it was just enough for a Google Meets meeting that I could do a face-to-face conversation on the treadmill while walking for 35 minutes. So I got, 2 miles in and the conversation and had a lot of fun and was able to hop in the sauna right after and get my whole morning routine in just because I threw it into a walk and talk mode. There's something special about that. I think one of the coolest gifts you ever got me was a treadmill desk where the desk came up high. There was a little treadmill underneath it. You could turn it on 1.5 to 2.0 speed. So I could be walking and talking. I would walk and do coaching calls. I'd walk and do meetings. I would walk and do a podcast. Like I just walk and talk the whole day, and I'd get in miles and miles of movement. Now, the flip side, what you were bringing up is from sitting too long. Yeah, I actually, and I think it might have been the way I was sitting or the chair. I mean, I wouldn't have bought a fancy chair, and it was supposed to be ergonomic and all this stuff. But from sitting too much, my lower back and hips started to get jammed. And so luckily, we have a phenomenal resource we use that I've been working out with since I was 13 years old, the Egoscue method, egoscue.com. I reached out to Brian. I said, Brian, can I send you my pictures of my body, and do you see anything funky here? And he literally sent me back a picture, and he's like, dude, what the hell happened to you? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, here, let me show you what I see. And it was a picture where my ears, neck, shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles are supposed to be on this straight line. And it's like there was a line, and then my body was just angled straight off the line. And I was like, oh, shoot, what happened? And he's like, dude, are you sitting too much? And I thought about it, and I went, wow, I didn't think about that. I was just so busy getting stuff done, and I'm aware of this. I know this. I've practiced this stuff since I was 13 years old. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, I'm like, I have been sitting a ton, and I didn't even think about it. And it literally threw my whole body out of whack just by not keeping it moving all day. And so he laughed at me. He's like, you know better than this. Come on. And so I've done my best now to start getting out of the chair regularly. So walking more, stretching more, getting my stretches in the morning, at night, just finding a way to get my body moving in different ways consistently to prevent it from getting locked back into that hip and leg joint getting all jammed up again. So sitting too long definitely can wreak havoc on your body. Number 7, continuous learning. The modern work landscape is ever evolving regarding upgrading your skills through online courses, webinars, reading relevant books and articles. Constantly be learning, constantly be improving yourself. What do you think about this?
You're incredible at this. I think you are such a great example of diving into not being stubborn about, or even you're just not stubborn about learning more ever. And even the things you've already learned about, you'll even go deeper into. Yep. So I think that you're just a prime example of how continuous learning can really pay off. Even if something seems obvious, like the time management example was so great. You're like, well, yeah, obviously. But like, this is where our ego can slow us down. Oh, I already know that. Oh, yeah. Well, like, what's this going to teach me that's new? It's like, well, looks like you've dropped into a fixed mindset instead of a growth mindset and figuring out what is there I can learn from this, and or how could I do what I'm currently doing better, right? Or a refresher. Maybe you know it and you're doing it, but you've kind of like slacked off on it. So I think that just from this conversation, you've brought up so many examples of people or places or courses or things that you've invested in into your personal growth, and it's paid off tremendously when it comes to productivity. Even the craziest things. I remember when we first met, you're so organized on your desktop. I've never seen anything like it. It's phenomenal. And you said that it came from investing in a person that helped you learn Final Cut Pro. And so he was doing his own editing for a while and still does sometimes. And because he invested in this person to teach him a program, they taught him how to organize your files and your folders and everything, and it's spilled out into so many other areas. It's not just your editing stuff, it's everything on your computer, which also then allows you to categorize it in your head. So if you need something, you pull it. Like, it's so easy for you to find. For me, like, check in with me in a week. Like, I need to do better at this. I'm a great learner. I love learning. I without a doubt, I feel like one thing I really admire about you is you prioritize it at such a high level. Like, I do it, but I probably could time chunk it more. Like, this is my learning time. Whereas you always are getting it in, which is incredible. And also too, I would say my advice to myself, if I were self-coaching myself, would be like, what I know about myself is I love doing things with people. So I have done best when I do a learning course, a program or something with someone else. Yeah. And so when we do things together, I get so much more out of it than me just doing it. That's just the personality thing of me. I love doing things with people. So whatever it is for you, whoever's listening, if you know you need to do it and you're not doing it, ask yourself, what would help me be able to do this? If I could have it all my way, or if I had a magic wand, what would it look like? And for me, it'd be like, well, I would do it at this time or that time, or I do it with this person, or I would do this course, or whatever that looks like. But schedule it in and find out your rhythm to invest into learning for yourself. And one last thing is, I forget where I learned this, but I thought it was so beautiful. What a nod it is, or a gift it is to yourself, subconsciously, to say, I'm worth it, to invest in myself, into my learning, into my growth. Like, your soul, that's a way to nourish yourself, your being, right? And so if nothing else, just do that as a gift for yourself, right?
Somewhere along the way, I learned lots of little things. So leaders are learners, leaders are readers. I learned 10 pages a day, no matter what, as an absolute must to keep your mind thriving. I read research around old people who are preventing dementia or memory loss or Alzheimer's. All these people were avid readers and always learning about stuff. So there was all these benefits, pains to avoid, gains to get. But then there was, I forget what book it was. I think it was Mastery by George Leonard. But it was one of those books where it talked about the ultimate sign of a master of any concept is when they decide to become an eternal student of it. Mm-hmm. And I went, wow. The ultimate sign of someone who has truly mastered any concept, they've mastered it, is because they've committed to being an eternal student of it, meaning they never stop learning about it. They're always finding the new thing, the next thing, the rendition, the revert, the updated version, the new insight, the new adjustment. And it's the ability to not learn 10,000 punches, as Bruce Lee says. I don't fear the guy who knows 10,000 punches. I fear the guy who knows one punch and has practiced it 10,000 times. Whew. And it's that concept of your ability to know a concept and be committed to learning it and seeing it through your filter, through their filter, through a different filter, through re-see it through your filter, but at a different stage of your journey in life. That commitment to constantly be diving into it brings such richness. It brings mastery of the concept, and it brings a humbleness. I think it was also reinforced. I remember when I was a young coach, I was 18 years old, and one of my very first clients who signed up was a gentleman who was in his 50s, who was wildly successful, who had already been a corporate executive for many years, who had already built and scaled multiple companies, who ran organizations, who was also certified and trained as a coach, and he hired me as a coach. And I remember feeling intimidated. I remember feeling on that first call like, did he pick the right name? Are you sure he asked for me? Huh. And I remember I'm quite blunt and just transparent. Like, I'll just throw it on the table if I'm thinking about it. And so the very first call, the very first thing I said to him is, why'd you pick me? I'm new. I'm only 18. I've never scaled a company at this point. I'm still finishing my own undergraduate work in— I'm just learning how to be a coach. Why me? And he laughed. And he said, that's the exact reason why I picked you. I went, huh? And he says, because if I would have picked someone like me who's been around the block 10 times, who's been learning this stuff forever, they're going to have read the same books. They're going to have the same perspective. They're going to have come to many of the same conclusions. I'm not going to get anything new and fresh. The reason I asked for you is I want someone who doesn't have all the biases that I have to take a look at my situation and see if they can spot anything that I can't see myself. And I went, ooh, I didn't realize there was value in a fresh perspective. There was value in hearing or seeing a reflection from someone who doesn't know all the things you know and can't see the things you've seen and doesn't have the experience you have because they're fresh, they're new. They see it totally differently. They don't have the same lessons that were taught to you along the way. They don't have the same heartaches or headaches that came along the journey. They look at it and go, what about this? What about that? They just throw it out there, and it seems like a fresh new idea that's never been thought of before, and they're super excited about it. And so having people like that in my life who were eternal students, who were humble enough and excited to say, hey, I've checked all the boxes, won all the awards, have all the accomplishments, have done all the things. I'm going to put myself in a room with someone who's never seen this stuff and ask them to look at it and give me their opinion. And I was like, wow, that's a master of their craft. I've worked with other people who, even though they would act humble, in their own mind always believed they were the smartest person in the room. And I've been taught over the years, never be the smartest person in the room. You are in the wrong room if you're the smartest person.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you think you're the smartest person, you're probably on your path to a slow mental decline and painful future. And the only reason I say that is because you stop accepting new. You stop accepting new ideas and new thoughts and new perspectives. And the moment you get stuck in that, it becomes a spiral of death emotionally and psychologically over time. So don't land up in a death spiral. Let's see. Number 8, avoid burnout, especially with concepts like the 4-hour work week. It's essential to focus on effectiveness over time spent working. Take regular breaks, practice mindfulness, and ensure you have personal time. So I think we covered this a little earlier.
Totally.
But it's just the concept of be really efficient with your time, meaning pick the most important things, use the 80-20 rule, have boundaries. All of these things play into this one, and they help you avoid burnout. Also, having personal time scheduled in, having that movement scheduled in, having friends to regularly connect with and catch up with all help. Number 9, stay connected while working remotely. It's easy to feel isolated, so regularly check in with colleagues, even if it's just a brief chat. This can foster collaboration and help maintain a team spirit. So this is really important. I've definitely experienced the work from home by myself loneliness that can come up, meaning you're just working, early mornings, long evenings, you get done, there's no one else there, you're all by yourself, and it's like, now what? Kind of like someone to spend some time with. Now what do? I didn't make time to go connect with humans. I didn't make time to go have a chat with a friend. Oof. And so I think this one's really important, especially all the research shows. So there was the longest study done at Harvard University. It's a multi-generational study that's been passed down from research team to research team, all following the same people. And they found out that the people who live the longest are the happiest and earn the most. So how long you live, how happy you are, and how much you earn all came down to having a powerful peer group, having community around you, the friends you chose to spend time with. And the number one factor when they pulled apart all the research, having someone to regularly talk with each and every day, what they found was lowered the baseline stress level for people, which caused them to land up living longer, feeling happier, and earning more. And so this concept of regularly communicating with others, especially if you're working from home by yourself, is very, very important. Not only to stay connected and have friends and people you feel and you can thrive with, also for if you want to live longer, if you want to be happy, if you want to earn more, you need that group to just connect with, according to Harvard, to at least lower the stress level. What are your thoughts on this? You're a very people-y person.
It was the hardest thing for me when I transitioned from working in an office to working from home. It was the hardest thing. I love people. I love being around people. I have been told by managers and leaders and directors of mine that they didn't want me to work from home because when I was in the office, I helped bring the morale up. So I really thrive in that environment. It is the thing that, though we don't have an office, when I think about people, like this whole movement of work from home, I can understand how it's just easier and more convenient in so many ways. And I think from a company culture perspective, like, where's the time to like bond and connect and to go to lunch together and to laugh over silly things around the office and stuff? And I feel for people that don't have that. Like whether it's a remote position, I don't know. I have a lot of feelings around this. I feel it personally. I think that working remote can absolutely be super isolating. So if you're going to do it, if you choose to do it, or you have to do it, then make it a point to go schedule a lunch out with someone, or go to a place that is more communal to connect. Like maybe you join a co-working space where there are people that you can chat with and connect with. But we are humans, and humans are meant to be together. We're not the type of mammals that are meant to be living by ourselves at all. It's not good for our health. There's so many studies, like you said, that shows that staying connected and having community is important. So figure that out. And if I worked in corporate again, I would probably opt for exactly what we do now, which is I'll do 3 days in the office and I want my Mondays and Fridays at home. And the key thing is that you're still hitting the mark. And there's a part on like obviously your company of tracking that, but then also on your own personal integrity of doing what you say you're going to do, and doing and upholding those responsibilities that that you have for your work. And then find that harmony within your life. But if you do one or the other, regardless, it's important that you're staying connected, because you could be in the office and totally just be grinding and never go out for a lunch either, and never be connecting with your peers. So it's equally important there. But if you're home, obviously it's going to take a lot more effort. Yeah. So do it. I totally, it's so lonely sometimes. And that's why I am always probably moving and buzzing and trying to find people in my space, because I love people. So anyway, shout out to all the extroverts out there.
Number 10, set clear goals and review regularly. Know what you're aiming for. Weekly or even daily reviews can help you assess your progress, adjust priorities, and even stay on track.
There is this concept called the 20-mile march that we're both big fans of. And it's based out of a book by Jim Collins. Do you remember the name?
Good to Great.
Good to Great? Interesting. I thought it was something else. But anyways, so
in the book, he talks about there's two people trying to go across the United States. They're both starting in Los Angeles. They're both trying to get to Washington, D.C. One person, like Amanda was saying, on the sunny days, instead of doing 20 miles, they feel lots of energy, so they do 50 miles. The next day they wake up and they feel tired and sore, so they decide to just rest. The next day it rains, so they stay bunkered in and decide not to go. The next day it's sunny again, so they get 60 miles in, but then they feel exhausted. And then it rains again and they're bunkered down. And so they have this rhythmic pattern of, on the best days they try to do everything all at once, and then on the worst days they kind of just hunker down and do nothing. Then they took person 2. This person, like Amanda said, committed to 20 miles every day no matter what. They moved 20 miles in the rain. They moved 20 miles in the sunshine. They moved 20 miles in the snow. They moved 20 miles at night. They moved 20 miles in the day. Like, they just made 20 miles happen, and then they would force themselves to rest. Even if they had more energy, even if they could have gone further, they forced themselves to shut it down and rest. They never had a day where they felt exhausted or tired or overwhelmed, because They were only going 20 miles and then resting. And when they came down to the amount of time it took half the time for the people who were doing 20 miles a day no matter what to get across the entire country. By the time they reached Washington, D.C., the person who was doing the sprint and the stop and the rest and then the not go in the rain and then the sprint and then the rest and the stop, the wonky schedule, they only made it halfway across the United States by the time the other person had already arrived at the destination. And so that consistency, the long time historical story that sums this up is the tortoise and the hare. It's been told to many of us since we were kids. They have fairy tale or these kid examples where the rabbit sprints and then rests and then hurts and then sprints, and the little turtle just does its 20-mile march every single day. And ultimately, in the end, the rabbit gets distracted, shiny object syndrome, all these other things. The turtle just keeps doing its little 20-mile march every day and eventually crosses that finish line before the rabbit does. And the rabbit is shocked. How could this turtle have beat me? And it comes down to rhythmic, consistent progress no matter what. And so, where do you need more rhythmic, consistent progress in your life, in your business? Where can you lock in? I will move this 15 feet further every day no matter what. And as long as I've got my 15 feet of progress, I will check it off and be done for the day. It is a game changer once you lock it in.
The book was great by choice.
Great by choice. Good book. Next up, our top 10 quotes of the week. Number 1, work is not about the hours spent, but the results achieved.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah. I used to work at this place where they were very into butts in seats at desk and getting work done. And there are plenty of studies that have shown that there is no correlation between them being at their desk and their productivity. Yep. So the idea of focusing just on hours instead of output or outcome is counterproductive to getting to your goals in the workplace, whatever that looks like. The best thing someone could do in a director or manager role that's leading people is to support them in all the tools and training that they need to be successful, and give them clear outcomes of what it is that they need to hit to do the job well, and allow them some space for autonomy to be able to create and think and innovate and try out new things. But at the end of the day, if we're just measuring hours, we're completely missing the mark and focusing on the wrong thing.
Yep. I think there's a split to this, mainly because I've agreed with this. If the outcomes hit, it doesn't matter what I've done or what I'm doing or where I'm at or what's going on. Through recent experience, I can tell you from a team building perspective, from a collaboration perspective, from a all people rowing in the same direction, there's a big difference between the autonomy to go do wherever, however you want, as long as the outcome's met, who gives a crap what I'm doing, versus someone who actually wants to be there. Someone who actually wants to be part of the team. They actually want to collaborate and achieve this outcome. They actually want to. They enjoy doing this task or outcome. Versus people who see it as like, no, I'll get the outcome met because that's what I get paid for. Beyond that, this is my life and you have nothing to do with it. And I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in a meeting with this team. I don't want to be part of this discussion. I don't want to be involved in the rest of this. And it's like, well, if you really don't want to be involved, connected, or a part of this, why don't you go get a different job?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? You're doing the minimum show up to get your piece of the pie, and then
it's very
canceling, ignoring. It's absolutely transactional, and that doesn't work at all.
No.
And so I think this is the conundrum that a lot of companies are facing right now. Is they're leaning towards autonomy of. Yeah. As long as the outcome's met, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And then they're learning very quickly. Culture goes down the drain. Teamwork goes down the drain. Collaboration goes down the drain. Because there's these people who want to just show up, get their task done,
morale,
be done with it, and go do what they actually want to be doing with their life.
There's 2 really great books on this. One is, I think it's called Givers by Adam Grant.
Givers, takers, and traders.
It's about givers, takers, and traders. There's a great book on that. Are you going to give? Or are you going to take? Or are you going to trade? Yeah. And this is important for both the employer and the employee, or leaders of a team and colleagues. The other book is the Chip Connolly book, Peak. Both of those books are so great on touching on this, on what and going to give to relationships, all relationships, creating transformational relationships instead of just transactional relationships. And all of this boils down to stop trading hours for time and actually show up to give and to serve and be a part of the mission and the vision. That doesn't mean that every single hour of your day has to be dedicated to the work that you do, but be there, be a part of the mission. And if you're not, go find something else where you really believe in it. So it actually feels good to be doing the work that you're doing and you really love it and enjoy it. And even if it's not the most, sexy or glamorous job in the world, if you're a manager or a director or leader of a team, make that job rewarding for them. And if you're a part of a team where you don't love that job and it's not sexy or glamorous, find more meaning and purpose in it, right? Or find something else. I think that's what it really comes down to. But anytime you're trading hours for time and you're just trading, and in your relationship, and especially with work where we spend so much time, get out of here. Life's too short to be playing that game.
Yeah. I think the two models you're talking about, you can easily decipher this. So there's 3 levels in both models. The first level is someone who's just here to take. They're here to extract what they can from this. They don't want anything else about it. They're going to get as much as they can, as often as can, as fast as they can. And as soon as they've drained it, they will go somewhere else to take. Yeah. The second is trade, where they're here. They'll give you their time and get the outcome as long as you pay them. And then they want nothing else to do with this. They're just trading. I'll give you this, you give me that. I'll give you this, you give me that. I don't want anything else to do with this. And then the third is people who are genuinely here to give. Like, they are excited to share what they know. They're excited to share their insights. They're excited to share their gifts. They're excited to share their support. They're excited to share their tools. And they genuinely want to give to everyone and any piece that's a part of this puzzle. Yeah. The second piece is that concept of, in the relationship, can you elevate it from transactional, where you're here just trading, to relational, where you actually care about the humans and people involved, to transformational, where because someone's been part of this process, their life will never be the same again. They've become a better human. They've learned new skills. They've leveled up their career. They've expanded their identity. They've become a new type of human in this process. Therefore, it's elevated their experience of life and their experience of work. And so can you provide both? Can you provide an environment that supports and champions givers? And can you provide an environment that causes people and humans to transform in a positive way over time? Yeah. That's the real mix of this. Yep. Number 2, the future of work is not about working more, but about working more effectively. By Jacob Morgan. What do you think of this?
This is, I would say, foundational to the Core 4 program. It is not only about loving and getting more meaning and purpose out of all the things that you do, but in your career, it's not about being successful and making more money because you're working more. It's actually doing it so much smarter and more effectively, to where you do have more freedom and abundance in your life. I'm experiencing this firsthand, where since becoming a mom, my workload has not necessarily changed. It's actually become much, much bigger, but it makes me think so much smarter, and how I put what I do with each hour of the day. I have to work more effectively to actually fill all the cups in my life, in all the roles in my life, and the values, most importantly, that we live by. Our values, my personal values, our family values, our relationship values, like what those look like. To live in alignment with our highest values means I cannot possibly work more. I have to work more effectively. And so that's the way we support people in the Core 4 actually, is by helping them do that. And I'm so proud and excited about that, because goodness, it's so easy to just think, to get what you want in life or go after your goals and dreams and desires, you just have to work more or harder. And there may be a time in your place to do that, but if you did that forever, you'll burn yourself out. So what's more important is that you work more effectively. And that really comes by training and tools and coaches to help you think smarter, to do better than you were before, because what got you here won't get you there. It's important that you update those systems and processes of how you're doing work. And I've seen it pay dividends where actually I'm able to do what I love and do it in a smaller period of time, which feels almost like a constraint, but it feels like a constraint because I haven't updated the system. Once you update the system, then you realize, wow, I can actually get more done in this time and not lose track of my relationship and still be a great mom and still be a friend and do all the things I love. You know what I mean? And take care of myself.
Yeah. I think it's the sign of maturity and the evolution of mastery of any process.
Yeah.
Where in the beginning, you know, to swing a golf club, there's a million steps. There's getting your feet right and then doing your little wiggle and then getting your hands just right and then making sure your shoulders are right and then making sure your head's right. Like, you have to remember the 27 steps to swinging the golf club right. And then over time in practice, it's not 27 steps. You walk up, set your feet, do your wiggle, and hit. There's only 3 steps.
Mm-hmm.
But how did it go from 27 steps to 3 steps? And the only way it gets that way is through practice.
Yeah.
And so for so many people, I believe the future of work is being more efficient. I believe the way we get there is through practicing. It's practicing the skills and really picking which skills we want to hone, which craft we want to hone, and rhythmically and repetitively practice and practice and practice until you get to the point where you can get more done with less effort.
Yeah.
Because you've mastered the skill set.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people nowadays want that level of mastery without putting in the time. I mean, Steph Curry does 500 jump shots a day. It's not because he doesn't know how to shoot the basketball. He's willing to show up and practice every day. I always ask people, how long have you been doing what you're doing? Mm. And people tell me, I've been doing this for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I say, great. How often, how many hours a day do you practice what you do? Mm-hmm. Not do it. There's a difference between showing up to an NBA game and showing up to NBA practice. Is it how many hours a day do you practice? Mm-hmm. And most people stare at me with a dumbfounded look on their face trying to figure out what I'm talking about. Like, you're in sales. How often do you practice your presentation? Mm-hmm. You're in coaching. How often do you practice your coaching skills, your tools, your skill sets? You're a mom. How often do you practice the things you're going to do with your children? Mm-hmm. And we live in a life where we want to just be in game time mode mm-hmm. all the time with no practice. And then we wonder why we struggle to get things done more efficiently. And the answer is, you're not practicing. Mm-hmm. And it seems so simplistic once you think about it. And then people step back, and the question they always ask when I say that is, if I don't have enough time to do it all day long, where am I going to find the time to practice it? And this becomes the question of, well, you have to choose. Steph Curry isn't a financial banker and a private equity guy and a VC and a basketball player. He's a basketball player. And he's one of the best in the world. Because he's chosen his craft, he's honed his craft, he practices his craft every single day, and he's refined his skill set so well that he's literally one of the best in the world at what he does. Same thing with Serena Williams or any of these people. Like, they've honed their craft. And what I've noticed is there's a lot of people out there who want to try to be the best in the world at everything. I mean, even Michael Jordan couldn't get baseball together. Mm. And it's that thought of, like, have people had the guts, the courage to really hone in on what they most want to master in their life? Or have we allowed perpetual excitedness and shiny object syndrome to pull us in every direction constantly without ever mastering any of them?
Yeah.
There's something special that comes when you master something. And you can do multiple things in your lifetime. You just have to take them one at a time. Let's see. Number 3. Productivity is not just about doing more. It's about creating more impact with less work. I like this. More impact with less work.
one thing that you've shared that I love so much, and it took me a minute to wrap my head around, was what's the least amount of work that you can do for the maximum output.
Yeah.
And at first, my brain just kept going, well, that's just, I think I grew up being like where lazy was like a sin in my family. And you just had to work hard and work hard and work hard and always be working. I definitely adopted that workhorse gene without a doubt. But the shift that you really allowed me to see, and that you do so well, you live it and you also coach it, is what's the least amount of effort or energy or work that you can do with the biggest output. That doesn't mean that you're working necessarily less. It just means stop doing the things that take a ton of work and give you very little reward, or very little reward, return, productivity, impact, whatever it is. Yeah. I think that is so important to really evaluate what's all your output, what's the energy and effort required, and then what's the return, the reward, or the productivity that came from it, right? Yeah. And then get rid of the stuff that doesn't add up. Don't stop giving ourselves like badges of honor for like grinding ourselves into the ground. Look at the health right now of at least America. It's so unhealthy, stressed out, burnt out, overwhelmed, exhausted. It's not healthy at all. And yet we just keep adding more instead of just stepping back and saying, what actually of all the things I'm doing means the most and makes the most impact, but requires the least from me, right? That is so important. And you've done a really great job teaching that and living it.
Thanks. I think the key with this is people want to be able to do more. And in order to do more things, you need to free up time.
Yeah.
And so you say, okay, how can I free up time, thought, and energy from what I'm doing right now? Well, this is when this equation comes in. And one of the simplest ways to figure it out is put the options side by side. Mm-hmm. How many units of energy? How much units of time? How much resource is this going to take for me in order to get it done? Mm-hmm. And what's the ROI by when? By when will I get this, and how much will I get back for doing it? And if you have something that takes 10 days and all of your energy and all your effort and all your resources, and it gives you 2 units back of whatever you're measuring, happiness, joy, money, progress, whatever you're measuring and trying to improve. But then you have something else that takes the same amount of time, effort, and energy, but gives you 1,000 units back. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I'd be stupid to do the thing that's only going to give me 2 units when I could do the exact same thing with the exact same amount of time, with the exact same amount of energy, and get 1,000 units back. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. And like you said, there's humans who, one, don't know there's a choice. Mm-hmm. So they're just doing whatever they've been told or whatever they think they're supposed to be doing, because that's just what you do. Mm-hmm. And so number one, you have a choice. Number two, you got to figure out what's the smartest investment of your time, effort, and energy for the reward you're looking for. Mm-hmm. One of my clients actually showed this to me in a business sense, in a money sense. I remember I was talking to him, and he had just raised $200 million. He grew this startup, and then COVID happened, and then the legs got cut out from underneath it, and it was in a rough spot, and it looked like it wasn't going to make it. And I said, if by chance this doesn't work out, what is your option from here? What will you do? And I said, how do you pick what you want to do next? And he says, based on what I've learned here, if I don't see a clear path within 3 to 5 years to an extra $10 million of personal return on this project, I won't even consider it an option. And I said, that's interesting. And I said, before this last year of everything you learned and all the people you've worked with, would you have done something different? He said, of course. I would have taken what I was passionate about, or what I was excited about, or what seemed interesting, or what was fun, or what was exciting. And he's like, but I never looked at it that way. And he's like, after meeting all these people and all these groups and mentors and investors and all these people I've talked with, I saw so clearly, number one, if they can do it, I can do it. There's no difference between them and I as far as earning potential. The only difference is what they were choosing to limit as far as what they're willing to partake in and what they're not. And I said, that's interesting. And he said, most of these guys, if they don't see a clear path to $100 million of return in 10 years, they won't even look at it as an option. They go, nope. And I said, why? And they said, because it's blocking them from something else that could get them to that result. that $10 million project is blocking them from a $100 million project with the same time, same effort, same energy, same amount of resources. One of them adds up to 100, one of them adds up to 10, one of them adds up to 1. Same amount of investment, totally different return. And he says, at this stage of my life, I've only done it a few times, but I'm no longer accepting anything that doesn't add up to 10 million in 3 to 5 years. And he literally took everything else off the table and said, no to those. I'm going to go find something that adds up to the number I need to get to. And I said, that's interesting. I wonder if we applied that to our health. You could do the same amount of effort, and one of them actually gets you to your target of muscle gain or fat loss or VO2 max improvement. One of them doesn't. What about in your relationship? You could. One of our mentors said, there's nothing worse than trying to wink at a cute person in the dark. You're putting in all this effort, and they don't even know you're trying. It's dark. They can't see you. And so he said, if you're sitting there putting in all this effort trying to do something to show your spouse or significant other you love them, but you're not highlighting it, you're not putting a spotlight on it, they don't know you're putting in all the effort, you're putting in a lot of energy with zero return. Or even go a step further, ask them, what part of this is actually important to you? And do that piece and scrap the rest. And all of a sudden, you're doing the most important thing only and getting the result you really desired. So it goes for every part of life. I just thought it was so interesting when you apply it specifically to business, how clear he was on, if it doesn't add up to this within this time frame, it's blocking me from getting that result with another vehicle.
So the biggest takeaway here that I'm hearing is have your vision or your goals so clear on what you're trying to achieve. And a lot of times people only think of what they need to do to get there. And then they see, and then they get noise or busy with a bunch of other things. But if you, instead of just having like the goals set, you actually create a filter in your life. And now every option is run through that filter. Does it help you get to that end goal? So it's literally applying a filter to your life and then evaluating every option if it aligns with that outcome. That's so great. I think that I don't know anyone that actually really does that. How powerful would that be? Do you know what I mean? We don't create those filters. We just kind of have the goal and then we think only the action items we need to do to get there, instead of you have your action items to get there, but also as other opportunities and everything comes up, because life's going to test you. The universe is going to test you. God's going to test you. Are you sure you want it? Is that what you want? And then if you don't have that filter on, is that actually going to help me get to the end goal? Or is it just a distraction? Yeah, that's so good. I love that. That's so good.
Number 4, remote work is the future of work. It is the present. It is the now.
Remote work is the future of work?
Yep.
It sounds like it. I love people, so that's not I love the ability. I think everyone can agree that not have to commute so far, to not have to, go find lunch and just go down to your kitchen and be in the comfort of your own home is really lovely. It can also be extremely distracting because then things start to blur and bleed into the other parts of life. And I think, it's the future. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there as far as etiquette, morale, and culture building within a company, because now you're talking through computers and screens and text and emails instead of feeling someone's energy in person. And it's so different when you're in person. You can read their body language so much more. You can literally feel their energy and connect in ways that are so beautiful, even if it's just over lunch or, water cooler talk or whatever they talk about, but you still get to connect with people. I personally really love working in person, so it's kind of a bummer that I find it a little sad that it's so spread. But the beauty of that is that we are able to tap into talent and people from all sorts of places that otherwise we wouldn't maybe be able to. And also it allows us to learn and grow. With every challenge that comes from, this remote work, we're able to see, well, what does culture look like when you're spread out around the globe, right? Yep. How do we maintain company morale and get people gung-ho and focused and energized behind the mission and the vision for this company and rowing in the same direction? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. I'm really proud of the tools that we actually teach and share in our coach certification program with Performance Coach University that helps people understand how humans work, what drives them to action. Because when you learn those tools, you're able to better communicate, you perform better, you're able to lead better and get more performance and engagement and what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiration or motivation out of your team to really show up and deliver and perform at their best. So I'm grateful for the work that we do, because I know it helps a lot of teams and companies and individuals on a coaching level. But on a personal level, I do kind of miss the workplace in person.
I think there's some benefits, like you mentioned. You can work with people all over the world at the exact same time. You can have a 24-hour business, meaning you have different teams on at different schedules, so things are running all day and all night. Half the team's sleeping, half the team's awake, and then it flips.
Yeah.
So there's real benefit to it. I think one of the downsides is keyboard confidence. People have that feeling of the internet where they get away with behaving and acting in ways they would never do in person.
We have seen some awful examples of this.
And so it's this thought process of when you put people face to face, they have to deal with the reality of how they're behaving.
They can't hide behind a keyboard.
Can't hide behind a keyboard, can't turn off their camera and just say, sorry, I'm not ready for it today.
Yeah.
Like they have to be present. They have to be there. I've watched people attend meetings digitally where they just turn their camera off, pick up their cell phone, and go do 12 other things at the same time. Versus if you did that in a corporate boardroom or a meeting room with other people, they'd all stare at you like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And so, like you said, there's work to be done. There's etiquette that needs to be improved upon. There's certain standards that need to be set in some way.
Yeah.
The other thing that most people don't realize as well is how much companies are able to see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because people pick up their phone and go do other things and don't realize you sign documents for most companies, they can see everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they know you're not there. They know you're doing something else. They know you're filling around on the internet. Like it's a mess.
Yeah.
And so it's this thought of that you think you're getting away with something. In reality, they're just identifying you and going, wow, this person's really disengaged.
Yeah.
Which is sad. And again, if you change that, if you put people in the same place, in the same room, their behavior totally changes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm very curious to see with Oculus and the new Apple headset, how that might change it. Because if you put the VR stuff on and now you're in the room with them and they can see your hands moving, they can see you moving, if it causes people to behave more like they're sitting in the same room with each other. I'm curious. Might work, might not. Hasn't happened yet. But that thought of if you can give them an experience of feeling like they're in the same place, maybe they'll behave like they're in the same place.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll be interesting. See where it goes. Number 5, focus on being productive instead of busy. Tim Ferriss. I like this one. So the difference between productiveness and busyness. You gave me some insight on this. You said in corporate culture, people pride themselves on being busy.
Yeah.
They pride themselves on how many meetings they can attend and how packed their schedule is and how often they're working. I had someone I was talking to the other day. I said, how are you doing? He's like, oh, we've been busier than we've ever been before. I mean, we are maxed out. Like, there's no time in the day. It's just meeting to meeting and team to team and client to client. And my first gut feeling was, that sucks. And he looked at me like, what are you talking about? It's great. And I said, if you measure busyness as your objective, yeah, you're killing it. I mean, you're running on that treadmill and that hamster wheel faster than anyone's ever run in a circle. But how much did you actually get done?
Right.
That's one of the things that people complain about when you have meetings all day. You get to the end of the day and ask the question, like, what actually got done today? We held everyone in a meeting. We went from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. What actually was accomplished?
Yeah.
What projects got completed? How much progress was made? And so there's a thoughtfulness in how you run your life or how you run your team to make sure you create space to actually drive things forward and make progress. Mm-hmm. And I always urge people, measure the progress, not the activity. Because if we give ourselves gold stars for activity, but nothing ever moves forward, then we feel like, oh man, look how busy I was. I feel so accomplished because I attended 12 meetings today. but nothing made progress. Nothing moved. And it's that thought of please, please, please pay attention to progress over busyness and learn how to differentiate the two.
Yeah. So if there was, so I think even in like a meeting, the easiest way to turn a meeting from busyness to a productive meeting is, what's our outcome here? Yeah. Have an outcome at the start of the meeting and leave with very specific action items or like an end result, right? Decipher between two. One thing that we've really done is, and this isn't like mind-blowing rocket science by any stretch of the imagination, but deciphering between, like, get that agenda, get that outcome in place, but then also separate a working session, because sometimes meetings can turn into a working session. And then again, you were busy, but were you productive? Right? So really getting super crystal clear, like you said, on the difference between busy and productive. And how I see it is productivity starts with, what's the goal? What's the outcome that you're trying to achieve? Have the end in mind always, and then be working towards that. And if it doesn't work towards it, then you might be getting a little busy and celebrating.
We call it wonky donkey.
Yeah.
Don't be a wonky donkey. Number 6, the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities, by Stephen Covey. I love this. I absolutely love this. We just did a session in our Core 4 program last week where we do a time and energy audit to find out, where is your time going, and does this energize you or drain you? Does this cause you to get closer to your goals or stall and block you from your goals? And then to make an ideal vision, or we call it a budget, for your time.
Yeah.
And I take out a budget and I show people what most of their lives look like.
Yeah.
And what's funny is the moment I show it to everybody, the whole room has this funny looking smile on their face and nervously laughs. And I ask them, if you were observing someone's life and this is what their schedule looked like, how many of you instantly know this person is not doing well in some area of their life?
Yeah.
And which area are they struggling with? And they instantly know where they're struggling. They instantly know where it's going wrong.
Yeah.
But it's a visual. So you show it to them and they get it instantly. Everyone understands. And then I say, okay, but for how many of you is this how you live your life?
Yeah.
And you see that guilty smile go across all their faces, and instantly they'll go, huh. And I tease them. I say, how many of you is it not working, but you keep convincing yourself maybe someday it might?
Yeah.
And everyone raises their hand, and I go, uh-oh. Okay, this is called a circle of delusion.
Yeah.
You're doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
You know it clearly doesn't work, but you keep doing it hoping that someday it might work. You're in a circle of delusion. How you can get out of that circle of delusion, like you said, get clear on the outcome. If you could have it all your way, what would your weekly schedule look like?
Yeah.
How much time would you allocate towards your health? How much time would you allocate to your relationship? How much time would you allocate to your family or kids? How much time would you allocate to learning and growing?
Yeah.
And people look at their schedule, and for most people, their whole schedule is work. And then they have these little like 15 and 30-minute windows every now and then scattered, how they're supposed to massively improve their life in these little moments of time.
Yeah.
And then they feel exhausted from work, so they don't have the energy to actually invest in those little moments of time to actually make progress. So I help them revamp the whole thing.
Yep.
And for most people, when we revamp it and create this vision, they look at it like they're like, that's a fairy tale. Like, how in the world are we going to make that reality? And I told them it took me years.
Yeah.
It took me years to make this. But it's our actual day-to-day life now, and it is fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's learning how to focus on progress, not just busyness.
And prioritizing your priorities instead of your calendar.
That's right. So you pick what's most important and schedule it on. The other piece we talk about is in what order to schedule things.
Yeah.
For most people, they look at their calendar and they go, okay, I have all these work things I need to do. Shoot, where can I fit in my workout? Or where can I fit in some time with my spouse?
Yeah.
You're doing it backwards.
Yeah.
Take your values and put those in first. Schedule your health first. Schedule your relationships second. Yeah. Schedule the time with your family next. Schedule the fun time. Schedule the learning time. Schedule all the things that are most important to you. And then say, okay, how much time do I have left over for work? And where can that squeeze in? And when you flip it, all of a sudden you feel alive again.
Yeah.
And then it comes back to that piece of you have limited time to get the maximum output. You have to be really efficient with that work time to make sure you get the ROI you still need. Number 7, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Abraham Lincoln. Did he say that?
What does that mean to you?
I think that means it goes in line with everything we're talking about. The best way to predict the future is know your outcomes, know your vision, know your plan, and do what it takes every day to continue to make progress towards it.
Yeah. Why don't most people do that? Or do most people do that?
Do most people do that? Like on Earth?
I don't think so. I think a lot of people kind of live by default. I think there's so this is like opening a can of worms a little bit, but there's some people, we can talk about it from a growth versus fixed mindset, right?
Sure.
Fixed, this is just the way it is. There's nothing I can do about it. For some people, depending on where you grew up, surely you have, there might be some limitations, and at other places, some privileges. And however, if we can all adopt a growth mindset and step into how can I make this possible? How can I create the future I want? Given the cards, given the hand that you're dealt, well, dealt a hand of cards, right? So to speak, given the hand that you've been dealt, how can you use that in your favor? How can you work with it to create the future that you want? And I think that sometimes people fall into a fixed mindset or forget that they do have power of choice, but it's their beliefs or their community or their environment that has convinced them that this is the way it is and this is how it's going to be, and there's nothing you can do to change it. But when we can really lean into that power of choice that we have to just 1% change life in the way that we want it, in our favor, to create our future, how much of a ripple that's going to create in our life and our future and future generations. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we had dinner with a family that one of the kids, they were growing up in Eastern Europe. It wasn't this big flashy place. There wasn't all these limitless, boundless opportunities to go to college and that, play sports and do all these things. And his parents just saw that he had an interest in computers and were like, okay, let's just send him to coding camp. Let's just help him learn what he wants to learn. And we had dinner with them, and it turned out from that position of just going to coding and learning about computers, the kid started Google.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And you sit down and look at that, and you're like, wow, Eastern Europe, humble family.
Super.
Nothing crazy going on there.
Yeah.
And he just got obsessed about something he was so deeply passionate about. That worked out. Yeah. Sergey's doing pretty damn good in life at this stage. One of the co-founders of Google, and it's that concept of, but having dinner with him and his family, you sit there and listen to his brother or you listen to his parents, like they're damn proud of him now. But we asked, what was your first job? And his parents laughed and said, who cares what his first job was? That's what his job is now. They're so proud of him. And we said, well, did you ever have a job before this? And they were like, no, he was just fascinated about computers. So we sent him to coding camp and everything started from there.
Yeah.
And so this thought of, well, was Eastern European countries, like, is that a follow your dreams part of the world? Generally not. Like, if you go to Russia and Poland and Belarus and these types of places, you don't get a genuine general populace of like, it's all about the dream and doing what you love. Like, that's not generally how people think about life or approach anything. Yeah. They're like, life is bullshit, work hard, make the most of it. And not always, but there's a genuine, it feels pessimistic.
Yeah.
And
it's
they tease us for being very American in our optimism
Anything
of everything.
Is possible.
Yeah, like it's very American of you. Let's help everybody. Everything's possible. And they're like, ugh. And it's that thought, though, of like, that environment didn't support it. The environment wasn't the thing that made it grow. Was it because he had access to all these resources? Not really. They just found a normal coding camp, a normal thing where kids can learn computers and sent them. Was it because his family was so well off? Not really. They were hardworking, normal people. Was it because he had all these contacts and all these, strategic advantages? No. None of these things added up. He just knew what he really wanted and had a deep passion about something and was curious on how far it would go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that piece. I'm also admired when we met him. I did a little research on him, and he was known for always wearing tennis shoes, sports clothes, shorts and a t-shirt. And middle of a meeting, he just jumped down and do 30 push-ups. Go to the grocery store. I remember they mentioned, it was funny. They're like, oh yeah, he'll usually take the stairs instead of the elevator, and he'll carry all the groceries in his hands just to get a mini workout in while going from the store to the car.
Love it.
I'm like, this dude's making progress. He's being efficient. He's going, I don't have time to go to a treadmill for an hour, but I could carry the groceries as my weights and go up 3 flights of stairs to the car. I just got in 3 flights of stairs and, some shoulder lifting here and some finger strength.
Yeah.
Middle of a meeting, he needs some energy, drops down, does 20 push-ups, jumps back up. There, got some push-ups in, energized, let's go.
Yeah.
And so it's this thought of he's being really, really creative and useful of how to squeeze the juice out of the time he does have, which I think is the opportunity. Number 8, adaptability is not imitation. It means power of resistance and assimilation. How well can we assimilate? How well can we persist and resist and find our way to what we need to? How adaptable can we be in the future? I think this is really, really important. I've watched people that if you change one little thing in their world, their whole world melts down. And I've watched other people, you can take them to another country, put them in a place where they know nobody, take away all their resources, tell them they can't use their old skills, and they thrive.
I love it.
And so it's this thought of, can you be adaptable?
Yeah.
That's the real test at this stage of history, because life is going to transition. Things are going to change. Things that used to be good now become bad. Things that used to be an opportunity now become the door closes.
Yeah.
How quickly can you adapt to the environment? And the people who can adapt the quickest have the greatest access to opportunity.
Yeah. Do you rise to challenges or do you crumble?
That's right. That's right. Number 9, in the age of technology, there is constant access to vast amounts of information. The basket overflows. People get overwhelmed. The eye of the storm is not so much what goes on in the world. It is the confusion of how to think, feel, digest, and react to what goes on. Ooh, I like this. I like this one.
What do you like about it?
Access to information used to be the difference between success and failure. If you could learn the skill set, if you knew the information, if you had access to the insight or the facts or the little bit of an intricate understanding, that would be the difference between success and failure. Nowadays, I can go attend classes for free at Harvard online.
Yeah.
They broadcast classes. So even if I can't afford to go there, or I don't live in the country, or it's unreasonable to quit my job and just go back to school, on a Thursday afternoon, if they're broadcasting a class on physics, I could literally just turn on my computer, stream it, watch, and I'm sitting at Harvard learning from a Harvard professor.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I can go on YouTube and take endless amounts of classes on just about anything. So it's not a lack of access to information anymore.
Yeah.
It's the dedication to say, I'm going to pick what I want to master, and I'm going to repetitively learn and practice until I master it. I mean, Google gives away all their classes and certifications for free on their website. You can get certified in Google Ads, Google Search, Google SEO, like all that stuff. It's right there. LinkedIn does it too. You don't have to pay for these courses anymore. You just have to decide which path you want to master and be consistent and dedicated enough until you do. I think it was really neat when we were at that Air Force base and they found out that structured learning, meaning they made you take this class and then this class and then this class, and you had to do it in person. That was okay. The moment they allowed students to pick their own path, where, hey, you have to take these foundations, but from there, you choose what classes you want to take. and they put the classes online. Go at your own pace.
Yeah.
I remember we were there, and it was a Sunday morning at like 4 or 5 in the morning, and they were moving us to go to a meeting, and we went by, and I said, "What's that?" And there was a bunch of people sitting on the steps connected to the I guess, Wi-Fi, or connected to the whatever the learning source was. You had to be in the building. So they'd go, the building was closed, they'd sit on the steps, they'd log in, and they'd be taking classes on their own time, in their own way, just burning through all these trainings, educating themselves and skilling themselves up on different things. And they landed up completing these classes 2, 3, 4, 5 times faster than it would have happened if they just made them go through the standard curriculum. And they not only completed their own curriculum, they completed specialty courses in all these other fields that they were passionate and interested about. And I was like, that's fascinating. And so the same thing here with this quote. As the world changes, the ability to access the information is no longer the barrier. Like back in the day, to go to a prestigious university and get access to the best information, you needed money and time and connections and all this stuff. Nowadays, if you have a phone and the internet, you can get access to it. So it's no longer a barrier. Now the real barrier is choosing the path you want to be on and staying consistent until you really master it.
Yeah. Focus, commitment, grit.
That's right. Number 10, success in this new era is not about becoming a machine, but about understanding and harnessing the potential of both man and machine.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, how freeing is that to think you don't need to be a machine, yet not being fearful of the machine.
Totally.
That is like AI. That was the thing that came up for me in this was AI. How do we really embrace man and machine, or woman or humans and machine, right?
Yeah. I put the word productivity up, and someone mentioned immediately, they're like, oh, I hate this word. This just sounds like the corporate's version of how do I squeeze the life out of every human I have until they don't have any left, and then I'll swap them out for another. And I was like,
that's interesting.
Ew.
Yeah.
Ew, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because she's right to an extent. There's some perspective of large organizations figuring out how productive can a human be within so much hours and so much time, and what can we expect the output to be per human. I get it. I understand why they're doing that math and what they're trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out their margin and how much time it takes and how much effort and when they can expect results and the production line and all this stuff. At the same time, that can be useful, different moments of life. I remember a stage of life when I was very much in that mode. Mm-hmm. And I saw a video the other day, this guy talking about it. He's like, I get up at 4 a.m. and I give myself 2 seconds to get out of my bed. And then I spend 20 minutes on reading a book on 2.5 speed so that I can soak in the knowledge. And then I go do my affirmations with my wife. And his day was so structured. And it's all about the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And I was like, that's really productive. And for moments of life, all of us need the ability to do that. If you don't have the ability to drive productivity like that, it'll be hard to get really far in life. If you have that ability, do you also have the ability to slow down and actually enjoy all the pieces?
Right.
Is the opposite side of that. It's the counterbalance. Because some people can only be productive, and if you try to get them to actually just be, their brain explodes because they can't sit still. On the reverse side, some people are really good at sitting still and couldn't get shit done for the life of them. And so it's the two muscles, and they're counter muscles. It's a bicep and a tricep. They pull different directions and have different uses. Do you have both gears? Do you have the ability to slam in the top productivity mode and drive something forward? And then as soon as you're done, can you switch gears and go straight into blissful being? Yeah. Both are very, very useful nowadays.
Yeah, it's so true. I just trying to think about how this person was so hung up on productivity and just thinking it was so awful. And I understand why someone might come up with a negative association with the word productivity, but that's when only used in a one context. Yeah. And like what you're saying, the inhale is just as productive as the exhale. And if we did one without the other, that's not productive actually. So it's interesting. To me, it's just, if you have a negative association with productivity, I'd challenge the meaning of productivity, because when we're only looking through it of a filter of output, or in a, a certain filter, a certain way and meaning, versus what does productivity mean for you? Because productivity is important. If our lungs aren't productive, well, we're in bad shape, right? So productivity is a really beautiful thing, unless it's only focused on output, working harder. But you could, gosh, this is so fascinating that someone had such a negative association with productivity. I would lean into that and work on that, because the exhale is just as important as the inhale. There's like what you're saying, both are important and productive.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in. What are your final thoughts on this episode?
What are my final thoughts? Well, I'm so proud of us, because so for those watching, this will probably get stitched together. We probably look a little different because we recorded it, I don't know, a week apart or something like that. I'm proud of us because on the topic of productivity, we managed to still create this great episode. We managed to still show up for our clients and our students and our graduates, for our relationship, for our family, for our health, and do all those things and still create this great piece of work that hopefully serves you. So my final thoughts are just that, like, focus on what matters most in your life. Work will always try to find its way into your every minute of your day. So prioritize what matters most to you, and with the hours that you leave for work, if that's an area that we're focused on, which we are today, work smarter, more efficiently, and really show up and deliver. Don't just be busy, but make it count, and don't let it seep into the other parts of your life. So I'm really proud of us for finishing this episode, and not just going, we got to finish it and forget everything else and put everything else aside. Like, this is proof that, like, it will get done and you will deliver, but don't let it take over your life. Prioritize what matters most, and and do your best.
Good
What
job.
about you?